wealth is not something to be ashamed of. Creating true wealth is something to be very proud of, because what does wealth give you? Wealth gives you the ability, resources to do amazing things in the world.
All right, y'all. Hey, welcome back for another episode of The Necessary Entrepreneur. And as we start to dive deeper into this brand and expose you and myself to people of either greater capability and expanding it beyond traditional entrepreneurship, we have a lot to learn. And today's going to be another one of those. So today is Patrick Rogers. You know, a lot of times people with these basic names, a Patrick and a Rogers, it's like, man, is there going to be depth to it? Today, there's going to be. So Patrick, he's the owner of Elkridge Advisors. Of course, another name that seems Elkridge Advisors. I promise you all, he is not this simple. But he works closely with entrepreneurs and business owners to bring clarity to financial decision-making, helping them think more strategically about growth, risk, and long-term outcomes. His work sits at an intersection of money and mindset, especially for founders navigating scale, uncertainty, and big decisions. I'm personally looking forward to a practical, grounded conversation about how entrepreneurs can build financial strength without losing momentum. Welcome, Patrick Rogers.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, man. How was that intro for who you are and representing what you're doing, what you're building?
Man, it's fantastic. I barely recognize myself.
Why did so many people are like, man, what's your history? Where'd you come from? And all that stuff. But go back to 2017, 2018, when you really dipped your toes into this world of entrepreneurship, as we talk about your business and how you're helping entrepreneurs. Why did you do that? Because I think we dig too much into who we are and where we came from, but it's like, why'd you do it? What caused you? Because then we're going to talk about how hard it is, what the steps it took, what all the failure looks like, and then how you can, what you've learned, how your business can then help other entrepreneurs. Why'd you do this? Because we're going to talk about today about these things, but you have to be resilient and you have to have stick-to-itiveness. You have to do all these things. And you probably have to learn new skills and develop self-help. You have to have a different mental mindset from being an employee. Why did you do this? And then did you know what it was going to be?
Yeah, man. Great question. Why did I do what I'm doing now? Why did I make the leap into entrepreneurship? For me, is all about freedom, Mark. It was that I knew from very early age, I knew that I was not put on this earth to work for another man, and that we as people were not meant to do that. And so, you know, when you think about people's lives, and this hit me hard with my dad. My dad he'd wake up every morning at 5:00, hop on a train in Philly, leave at 6:00 in the morning, get into Philly at 7, work till 6:00 at night, be home at 7, whatever, eat dinner and go to bed. Like, that is not the way I live a life, right? And he did what he had to do. He provided, right? Was able to get me off to where I needed to be. But like, when we look at life, it's all about freedom. It's all about, was not meant to work for another person for the rest of my life. And we have bigger things to do in life. We have a purpose over and above just existing and breeding children, right? So what kind of led me down this path is Navy over to so I started I think I started probably 20 businesses before I actually found the one that allowed me to make the leap. And it wasn't even mergers and acquisitions in 2017 at that time. It was finally doing business coaching to the point where it replaced my full-time income that I was working for the man. And I went into business coaching and consulting. And it's interesting story, kind of just, I'll keep going with it if that's okay, is what led me into mergers and acquisitions was, and actually one of my clients in 2017, business coaching clients. So up to that point, so while I owned a property management company, I kind of naturally got steered into doing business coaching for a whole nother reason. But I love helping people be successful. I love changing their lives. And so I was helping CEOs up to that point grow organically, right? So I work with a CEO once a week. We're talking about their team. We're talking about marketing, sales, whatever, but it's all internal stuff. It's not, it's external from sales and marketing and clients and all of that. But not inorganic growth. So we're not doing business acquisitions. So in 2017, one of my clients came to me and said, "Hey, I want to buy, there's a company." He was doing 4 million annual revenue at the time. And one of his buddies owned a business that was doing 6 million. And he said, "Hey, I want to buy this company. My buddy wants to sell it to me. Can you help me do it?" I was like, "Well, I've done acquisitions, but very small compared to this." So we pulled in an M&A expert. And this is what put me down this path of M&A is within 6 months, my client went from making 450K a year to 1.2 by acquiring this other company, basically 1.1, 1.2 within 6 months. Right. And so that's when it hit me. It's like, okay, yeah, all this stuff I've been doing, we've been having success. We're doing great things with other business owners, 10, 20, 30, 40% growth. But this is 200, 300% growth in 6 months. And so the concept now is to do that over and over again, right? We want to create true generational wealth. That's what the wealthy do. They acquire assets on a repeated basis, specifically businesses.
I'm thinking about this exponential growth because it's the comparison of you were training people how to do it organically. And that's just take your own business, go deeper in your customer, market and brand, do some more client acquisition, build from within. And that's a grind. Yeah. We all know it is, right? And then you all of a sudden, wait, there's an exponential thing happening. That must be the old physics background that the math starts going off in your head, right? And you're really starting to think, wait a minute, we're putting in 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week organically growing. We could take that same amount of time, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and we can 2 or 3x our income in 12 months.
Yeah. And the paradigm shift is it's a reframe for business owners, because up to this point, most business owners, when they think about business, they think about exactly what I was coaching them on. They think about, I have to get a new operations manager. Sales, we need to develop this new sales thing, client retention, internal, we need to upgrade and buy this equipment. We need to do a new marketing thing, whatever, right? All internal stuff. It's a paradigm shift. It's a reframe, and to think about business in a different way. And what we need to think about is, how do I, first of all, my first step as a CEO is I need to replace myself. I need to get it so somebody else is running that business first. Whatever is your baby, that your baby. And here's the challenge. We all have egos, man. We all got egos. We think nobody else can do it as good as I can. That's what I think, right? And it's a huge limiting belief, and it's going to cost you millions and millions and millions of dollars. So the first thing is work. Believe me, there's actually a lot of limiting beliefs and internal work that some CEOs used to have to go through, and I used to have to coach them through that. So the first thing is to allow yourself to replace yourself, get out of your own way, and then you just really start focusing on acquiring other companies.
Isn't it funny that we have these, to your point, egos and self-limiting beliefs? I mean, you put those together, it's so contradictory. We have these big egos that we can conquer the world, and then we're self-limiting. But the fascinating thing is, I don't know why every one of us running a business can't look around and say, wait a minute, I can't be the only one, because there's other really successful businesses in my same segment. There's obviously people running those.
Yeah.
Right?
And probably a lot bigger.
Yeah. So when you were doing business coaching and consulting, the reason why I want to go back is because those same problems and environments that you were coaching then, they still exist today.
Sure.
As you look back, what were some of the 1 or 2 consistent problems? Because I want to highlight that the issues and problems that a lot of, and you're talking about, you said 3 to 4 million. There seems to be this $3 to $5 million revenue segment that people have a tough time breaking out of. It's really weird. It doesn't even matter the part of the country, but go back to 1 or 2 of the things as you reflect now on where people are stuck. You were coaching those CEOs. Is there an area or 2, maybe you just go back to this, well, it's all about your own mindset. It's about self-limiting beliefs, but is there some practical things? Is there about bench strength? Is it about developing people? Is it better leadership skills? Is there 1 or 2 things that really stick out that you're like, man, this is really people's struggle in this segment of entrepreneurship and business that needs to be conquered, that they consistently dealt with?
Yeah, Mark, you hit the nail on the head. That 3 to 5 million range is is really critical for a number of reasons. People get stuck there for that exact reason, because I kind of like to think of business as a wheel, right? If I have a wheel here, right, you got the frame on the outside, and you have the spokes, and in the middle of that wheel is the hub of the wheel, right? If you pull the hub of the wheel out, the tire falls apart, right? Well, 3 to 5 million, or I'll just say under 5 million, under 3 million, definitely. Most businesses, the hub of that wheel is the owner, right? And if you pull that owner out, the wheel falls apart, the spokes fall apart, right? So once you start getting above 2.5 million, and it's industry dependent. For some, it might be more, some it might be less, right? But the goal is to remove that owner, the hub, and turn it into a business operating system. So a business operating system that's also run with a people first mentality. Right. So you make decisions in the business, not just strategically, but you're also making decisions based on people. And what does a people first organization mean? So it needs to, so a people first organization with the business operating system, just like everything else, you start from the top. You need to have, first of all, develop a true north of the business. And I know, everybody talks about, mission, vision, company commitments, core values, right? Most people don't do it right. Most people go, when they set up those, they get all excited. Oh, I have a vision, I have a mission, I have company values, but they don't do anything with them. They do that, they go through an exercise, and then it sits on the wall. The best, and if you've read Good to Great, if you've read any of the great books out there, that the best leaders out there take that information and they become a parrot of that information. Like literally, that's the best CEOs, the best leaders. They are constantly talking about their core values. They're making decisions in the business based on their core values. So first of all, you start from a true north, the mission, the vision, the company commitments. And now once you've identified that, you start working backwards, and you make sure that everybody in the organization, number one, knows exactly why they're there. They know exactly why they're there. And they know exactly how what they do on a daily basis contributes to the overall mission, vision, and they're expected to, align within the company core commitments, core values. That a lot of people may overlook that, but it's a very powerful thing. It's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of needed. You're needed here, right? And then over and above that, how do we create that people first business operating system? Everybody needs to feel like they have a purpose there. So the purpose is aligned, but now we have to have growth. Us as human beings, we have to have growth. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? So we create a system where the business, or excuse me, the person, the employee, knows exactly what they need to do to get to the next step, right? So they see a ladder. They see that here's where I'm going in my business, my career, my first step here. I'm going to get promoted to this if I do X, Y, Z. And then here I can go here and I'll make this much if I do X, Y, Z. And so they see that ladder. So they're motivated. They're motivated to do great things. They have ownership. They have responsibility to the true north of the business. And then there's accountability around it. Every person has at least 2 KPIs, key performance indicators. And there's accountability there, and there's public accountability. You have a team scoreboard. So there's all these things that foundational things that are created. And then you couple that all together with routine quarterly meetings where we have a new strategy. And then we have weekly meetings where we have accountability around continuous improvement. All of that replaces what the owner has been doing on a much different level, right?
So I'm hearing this and saying the majority of those businesses have not implemented this type of strategy.
No, exactly, right? And so without that kind of a system to kind of bring it back home, right? Without that kind of a system, the owner can't get out of their own way, and they'll stop at 3, 4, 5 million. And that kind of a system is what you need to have to be able to have a legitimate professional sales and marketing program in place. Because most baby boomer businesses, they don't have any of that stuff. And if you ask that boomer who's looking to retire in the near future, he didn't need that. Why? Because they didn't have any kind of a formal marketing system. Most of these guys do a lot of referral. And this is one of the core things about our M&A program and our growth and scaling program is that one of the opportunities is that most of these businesses, they didn't have any kind of, it was all referral based marketing. So they might grow 5% per year, but that's okay. The baby boomer didn't want that though. He's been owned this business for 30, 40 years. He's complacent. For him to turn it around, him or her to turn it around to something that would grow fast, 30, 40, 50% growth, would require a lot of effort. And so they just stay kind of stagnant. They get some new clients, they lose some clients. They're in that $3 to $5 million range. So what we do is when we work with these companies, we come in, we acquire them. The first thing is we work on the back end of that business. We get it ready for scale. We put in the business operating system. We create a people first environment. Maybe we might even have to do some things on the product. We may have to look at the unique value proposition, pricing strategy, all of that stuff. But once that's in place, now you have a business operating system that's ready for scale. Then you go and turn on your sales and marketing engines and you fire away.
Yeah. So there's the opportunity. I'm in the real estate business, right? You were in property management. As I built also a foundation of net worth on acquiring real estate, this term value add, a lot of people don't, if you know what that word is, you're buying something for less than what it potentially could be with some improvement, right? So you're acquiring an asset at its current low value, but then there's something you can do to the property. You can lease it up. You can improve it.
Absolutely.
That by doing that, the value's you're doing the same thing with companies.
Absolutely. Yes. That's exactly what we do. And there's a couple other, so how do we buy a company and create enterprise value, right? You can create enterprise value by doing things like you said. Okay. So the value of a business, right? Just from a high level standpoint, the value of a business is equal to EBITDA times some kind of a multiple, right?
Yeah.
This is
1.5 to 5. Who knows the industry?
Whatever it is, right?
Overinflated. Take some AI business now. They might value a stock at 10 or 20, but that bubble will pop at some point. But let's just go 2 to 5 multiple.
Yeah. Whatever. It's industry dependent, but it's also size dependent too. So if you have a real small business, that multiple is going to be really small. A bigger business is going to demand a higher multiple. So there's things that you can do on that front to increase the multiple. And there's things you can do to increase obviously the profit, right? But one of the things that we really focus on is what's called a roll-up strategy. And that's multiple arbitrage. And when we're a small company, we're only attracting non-professional buyers, typically other buyers that are, smaller companies. And so the multiple's small, right? So for example, let's say it's a company doing, $3 million. Let's say it's, I don't know, 500,000 in EBITDA, something like that's just an easy number, right? Maybe it's like a $2 million company, 500,000 EBITDA. The multiple for that to acquire that company maybe is a 3, right? So let's say you pick it up for 1.5 million, right? Well, you can create enterprise value out of thin air utilizing a roll-up strategy or multiple arbitrage. So what you do is you acquire 10 of those companies. Let's just say theoretically, you bought 10 of those companies, but you don't even grow them. You don't do anything on the back end. You just put them under one umbrella. Just by putting them under one entity itself, you now are going to attract a higher level of buyer, a more professional grade buyer. And those are called private equity companies or maybe a strategic buyer. But here's the thing. What ends up happening is, remember what I said, the multiple is mainly dependent on the size of the company. So a company this small, we bought it was a multiple of 3. So 500,000 EBITDA times 3 equals 1.5 million. Well, I went out and bought 10 of those. So I spent 15 million, but I put them under one umbrella. So it was 500,000 of EBITDA times 10. I now have 5 million in EBITDA. That multiple is like a 6 now.
Wow. That's awesome.
So the enterprise value went from 15 million to 30 million. Now it's easy, but it's not simple, right? There's a
lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into this.
A lot of work. And ideally those businesses all have a common structure. They have a common operation. They're doing things similar, right? So there's a lot of coordination there. You don't necessarily have to have a brand though. They don't have to be all the same brand. They can keep their own branding depending on the private equity you sell to. But so for me, that was huge once I learned that this existed, right? Because everything we knew before this is, oh, business, I'm going to get a new sales guy. I'm going to do marketing, this product, this, that. It's all internal to your company. And when you start backing up and start realizing that this exists, you start figuring out, okay, I need to replace myself so that I can focus on, I'll still be involved with high level for my company, but I need to replace myself so that I can focus on acquiring multiple companies.
What's the best approach to, yes, they want to employ a Patrick Rogers to be their strategic advisor and their M&A guy, but what's the approach? If I'm freeing up my time as a CEO, and I actually just went to Boston and hung out with another real estate guy. It was all about M&A. It was all about acquiring other brokerages.
Nice.
And right. And so he's doing a lot more of it. And he's realized too, he can do traditional recruiting, or he can grow at 40 and 50, 60 agents at a time.
Yeah.
By these acquisitions. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's learned a ton. And he opened up the playbook specifically about this industry. Here's everything they've learned from their 10 acquisitions. Not just about M&A. So they're specific. There's all specific things to learn about these industries. That's the brilliance and the value of you, right? The things that you've learned that on your first 3 or 4 or 5 that you're going to have to learn and make a lot of mistakes on. When you're looking at, if I'm freeing up all my time as a CEO, I'm making an argument. I'm a relationship guy. I guess I'm assuming that I need to be out here creating relationships to start targeting these businesses on who do I want to partner with instead of acquire, right? And I'm assuming that's where the time has to be spent. Building these relationships out in the marketplace, or no?
Yes and no. I would ultimately say yes. So when we first started doing this, we got most of our, and you're referring just being able to find the businesses to acquire.
But then, and striking up a conversation and who to talk to and see if it's a product market fit with all your businesses. It's to go out and spend time finding them.
Yeah. Well, there's two different kinds of deals out there. There's one deal, which is an on-market deal. So it's represented by a broker.
The off-market are the best. Patrick Rogers, the off-market are the best.
There you go, man.
Come on.
You got your on-market and you got your off-market, right? So we're going for off-market.
Yep.
And as much as we can, we still do on-market, just depending, right? So we'll do an on-market if it's either with an investment banker, and there's a difference between a broker, and a broker is a realtor that sells business, right? You can probably market, no offense, but it's hit or miss, right?
You don't have to hesitate. You don't have to hesitate. Just come at it.
Some brokers have their head up there, and other brokers actually take time and consider it their craft and actually do it right and know how to price a business. What we find is most brokers are 30 to 40% overpriced of what will actually get qualified with a lender to even be able to fund the deal. And so, we see that a lot. So if we work with a broker, typically, depending on the brokerage, but typically it's going to be something that has what I call seasoned. The business it's been on the market. It's went in LOI. It's been kicked out of, and LOI is letter of intent. It got kicked out because it went to the lender, the financial institution, to get a loan, and they underwriting disapproved it because it's not going to cash flow. And they said, well, I'll approve you, but you need to come to the table with another $600,000 in addition to the $250,000 you're putting down, right?
And the numbers don't work, and it's like the thing.
Numbers don't work.
Yeah.
It falls out. So then the seller's like, okay, well then the broker comes to him and says, well, this, that. So let's take the price down. So the price has to generally drop 2 or 3 times before we get interested or get involved. And then there's investment bankers, and they're a different breed. Those are companies out there those are professional M&A people who know how to price a business. So we'll work with those, all day long. Love them. And even better than that is off-market deals, because now there's no representation from even an investment banker. And off-market deals, they're great. They're fantastic, but they're hard to find. And so, what we do is we go out and we're doing massive email marketing. Like if I don't know how many thousands.
I can't tell you how many calls, text messages, and emails I get on a daily basis now.
Totally.
Do you want to sell your business? It's insane.
Yeah. So you're getting out. So emails, we're doing LinkedIn strategy for our clients. So our clients partner with us. We have our team gets into their LinkedIn, which is nice because A lot of times if you're in Cincinnati, right, and we want to buy a business in Cincinnati, your LinkedIn's already in Cincinnati. So we hop in there and so there's a level of trust that's there. And then, I'll come back to the investment bankers just real quick. It is that those are really good too, because sometimes we'll get what's called a pocket listing. I know you've heard this before, right?
Yeah.
It's a listing once you develop those relationships, and CPAs are great for this too. Tax attorneys, you develop these relationships and they know that you're going to carry forward on it. You say what you do what you say, all that kind of stuff. And they trust that if they send you something, you're going to actually make it happen, right? Or let you know one way or the other. And so,
and have they also pseudo underwritten the deal as well? They're bringing it to you pretty much saying, we know we can get this done.
They know. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing about investment bankers. Like, to your point, is they're actually getting in and looking at it on a much level. They know what to look for compared to some of the brokers on the market.
Yeah. Yeah. So on your website, I'm glad I think you almost said a curse word, but you didn't, but you actually refer to that as some of your basic principles, right? You're not allowed to hang around with me much then, because I might drop a word or two, but one of the things on your website, one of the 3 significant statements, it says focus on returns. It says, if we believe a specific course of action leads to higher ROI for our clients, we pursue it. If not, we don't. This principle is the basis for every decision we make.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that again, it really comes back to, some, and we also we want to understand to each one of our clients that we talk with, we need to understand what's important right now. Is it upfront cash flow, immediate cash flow that's important, or are you okay with long-term gain? Because sometimes there's some deals, some decisions that we're going to make that will work for some clients and will not work for some other clients. So, but yeah, ultimately, when the day is done, everything we do revolves around the return on investment for our clients. And so it could be something that maybe makes us a lot of money now, or a little bit of money now, and a lot more down, vice versa. But if it's the right answer for the client, we're going to do it.
Isn't it funny that if you go back to, we know these stories of all these elite gurus, but back when old Charlie and Warren, and when Warren Buffett met Charlie Munger, who passed away, Warren was buying companies and tearing them apart. What was left over. So he was buying these bad companies, but he went in and saw that I can make some money on them. And he gives credit to Charlie Munger to slow him down and say, hey, listen, I think this is the wrong strategy. You should actually go buy good companies for a fair price instead of stealing bad companies.
Yeah.
Right. What does that do with a mindset in this M&A and world, saying that there's a different way to evaluate these different companies? Because you could take a company in the same industry and we might say, well, this company, EBA, this is the multiple, but it might be a different multiple based upon the company. Is that true? Like, because if you take a profit is not the same if it's a bad company or if it's a well-run company. Is that true, or do you disagree with that?
No, that's 100% truth. So when it comes to that multiple, that, you take 2 separate companies, right? And again, the value of any company, value is equal to EBITDA times some kind of a multiple. So now we have 2 companies, company A and company B, that have the same exact profit. You could have one company that has almost twice as much value as the other company with the same profit. And so the things that we're looking at there is, there's so much that goes into it, right?
Balance sheet, all types of stuff, right? I mean, there's so much.
Yeah. What's their trajectory? Are they on an upward trajectory? Are they on a downward trajectory? That's huge. How involved is the owner? Is the business operating system set up such that the owner's not doing anything? How much of that profit? This is another big one. So, obviously, as you know, we do M&A services for people. So we find and acquire the companies, but we also grow and scale the companies as well. So a lot of our clients, they don't do anything. They're just investors. And then, so we have an arm that acquires it, and we have an arm that grows and scales it. But, one of the things is that, oh gosh, I forgot what I was hitting on.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I think we're talking about the value of companies and taking 2 companies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The 2 values of companies. So you have company A and company B, the same profit. And so when we acquire that company, if one company doesn't have, and so this is where I was talking about, is when it comes to exiting a company, anybody out there, if you have a company and you don't have what's called recurring revenue, and this could be a huge difference in value too. Company A has no recurring revenue. Company B has a lot of recurring revenue. So what that is, let's just say 50 to 80% of that revenue or profit is due to recurring. So you don't have to sell every time. It's on like it's an annual contract or whatever, versus this company here, every year they have to go out and acquire new clients to make sure that they hit that nut, right?
And if
Whatever.
that comes from the person who owns the business, and that's going to be a vacuum when that
that's
person
even worse.
buy them
Yeah,
out.
that's a whole nother game. Yeah, I was just talking to, forget even that part. I'm just talking about recurring revenue versus non. So that's what we were talking about is profits are not the same. Company A and company B, that's another one is that huge recurring revenue. Other things that you look at in a company to maximize the value when you sell it is the bookkeeping. If we have to turn down so many companies that we look at acquiring, even though they're on paper profitable, but because they didn't have clean accounting and they didn't have taxes that were done in accordance with what the profit statement on their internal financials says. Whenever you have that discrepancy, you have a company that's not going to be able to, it's not lendable. It's very hard. It's more difficult. It makes it very hard. So that's one thing anybody can look at when they're looking to exit, is to maximize their value and make it so you can sell, is to clean up your bookkeeping. Make sure it's being done in accordance with GAAP principles. Stop doing the add backs for 2 years before you sell, or minimize it, right? And you want to make that internal P&L, whatever your net profit line is, match with what you're putting on your 1120, right? You have those match and everything is on the up and up. You're going to be able to claim the maximum enterprise value when you sell, and it's going to be able to get, funded.
So when people work with you, I'm sure that you have clients does anybody come to you and say, hey, a new relationship, say, we're looking to acquire 10 companies at this revenue in this segment. Will you guys go out and find the businesses and take care of the entire transaction? Like, is that in the scope of what you do?
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. So part of what we do is, and this is, I thank goodness for my partner, Robert Indries. He's actually in Romania, and the guy is phenomenal. I actually had him on my podcast. I used to do a podcast a few years ago. Had him on the podcast, and he shared with me what he's been doing for the last 20 years. And for the last 20 years, he has been coming into his clients and completely autonomizing the business, and taking over and putting in that business system for people. So I've been coaching people to do it. He's been doing it for people, and that's why we partner. It's a fantastic match. But that's exactly it. So now we have our clients inside of Elkridge Advisors. He's done that. He's created that autonomized business, so it's completely scalable. So we are infinitely scalable within our business. And so now any company that we go into, we just do the same thing. So we have the processes, procedures, and everything built up. That business system for how to autonomize a company, well, we've done that in our business, right? So the same thing that we're preaching to other people, we've already done inside our business. So we already have the infinite, scalable system in place.
All right. Speak to people who want to be, they want to acquire these companies. Let's say someone has never been an entrepreneur before. They had a really successful corporate career. They have a great 401k. They might have $1 million or $2 million in net worth. Speak to me about the level of success or failure of that person acquiring a business when they're a first-time entrepreneur versus building it. Do you have any experience here? Where's your mind go?
Yeah, so my mind immediately gets brought to a lot of our clients. A lot of our clients are actually, I'd say it's 50-50 between existing business owners who want to scale and grow through acquisition, and the other 50 or whatever percentage is corporate executives, professional men or women who have had their 20, 30-year run. They're making 200, 300, 400,000 a year. And it's very successful, right? Maybe they have a net worth of somewhere between $2 to $5 million. But guess what? They're still in the grind. they're still in corporate America. They're still waking up at 5 a.m. They're still, maybe working for a boss they don't appreciate, or even if they're not, but they're just still doing the grind, and they've come to a maturity level. And this happens a lot of times when we get in our 40s, right? Maybe 40s, 50s, is we start to really understand, okay, I've been spending my entire career, even though it's very rewarding. I've raised my kids, they're getting close to being, moving on. I don't need to put as much attention there. I can start thinking about, how do I create wealth for myself now? And I have the assets to do it, right? So that's a major thing, is I don't have as much time with the kids. And this avatar kind of fits a lot of our clients where it makes sense. They've got the $300,000-$400,000 to put down on a business, whereas before they didn't. They have a little bit more bandwidth, and they're starting to think about, okay, when I'm done and my kids are off in college, I don't have to stay here anymore. I can maybe move wherever I want. I want to start traveling with my wife or my husband or whatever that is. But, oh man, I've never done this before. I've never grown or scaled a company myself. So I know how to lead people. So there's a lot of unknown that comes into business ownership that we're able to help people bridge that gap. Right. So now we work with them. They have the assets. They basically become, it's almost like a small private equity company in a sense, because, for that client, they become the money partner, right? It's the loans in their name and the business is in their name. They own it. And we come in, we find the business, we help them. We do the 100% done for you acquiring it. And then we grow and scale the company for them. And they're just involved on a quarterly basis. And so we remove all of the gaps that were there between what they're doing now and being able to have that business ownership.
Is this not to dig too deep here, I'm sure that when you bring new clients on, but is this an equity position that you guys take to grow the business? I'm assuming that's what it is in a lot of these scenarios.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, we take, just depending on the scenario, we take a small equity slice, and then, we are, a traditional M&A firm, Mark. A traditional M&A firm will do something like 5, 10%, whatever, of as a success fee to help somebody acquire a company. Traditional M&A firms, that's where they stop, right? They don't help them grow and scale. And so we take that number down to almost nothing, and then we partner with people on the growth and the scale of it, right? Our clients all have the decision-making, 100%, they have the decision-making capability. We are the general managers, the operators of the business in growing and scaling it.
You talked about an autonomous company. What hits in my brain is this hot topic of passive income. And I love pushing back on it because I look at the trajectory of my life. I might be the example on how not to do it because I hustle and grinded, but a lot of people do look at the success I've had and say that's really successful. I push back because I say, hey, I'm not there yet. However, there's nothing about my businesses that are passive. And we could make an argument that I'm doing it wrong. I have awesome leaders in my company, but it doesn't feel like I'm the spoke in the wheel because I have multiple businesses, and those wouldn't be growing if I was the middle hub in all of it. Right. So,
exactly.
But I'm still essential. But if I weren't plugged in, the business would lose something. And I think same thing with Steve Jobs. Pull a Steve Jobs out of a company, pull an Elon Musk out of his company. What they've talked about is what would happen on the stock hits of the companies he leads if you pull an Elon Musk out.
Yeah.
So tell me what autonomous is and how that connects to if we're sitting here, if we're talking about passive, because I can't imagine, like, I'll go to Europe for 2 weeks. But you hear, I'm going to say a name. I didn't even mean to do this, and I try not to, from the book. But before he was in politics, people read this book called The Art of the Deal.
Sure.
And I won't even say the guy's name because it's just so toxic now on how people respond to just politics. But he talks about his businesses started to suffer when he spent too much time in Europe.
Yeah.
So talk about this autonomous. Are we talking passive? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Great question. So our partners, we still want them to be involved. as much as they want to be, right? Because there's some people that just have that innate desire. I want to be involved. I want to be connected to it. So what we ask is at a minimum, they're there for the annual meetings and the annual strategy meeting. And that's it's a 2-day event. We spend a day and a half working on the strategy, and then, a half day doing something fun. And then the quarterly meetings are every 90 days. And so we ask our partners to still be involved. However, what we're talking about here is when it comes to making strategic decisions, when it comes to how to really grow the company. Well, between Robert and myself, we have over 50 years of B2B, B2C experience. We know, we've been through it, right? We've made the mistakes already. We've already hired the wrong companies. We've already done all of that wrong. So we have now strategic companies that Robert and I are both owners of, that we've been able to help mold. One's an AI company. We have an AI software company that we're putting in all of our companies. It's phenomenal. We have a business operating system, like a project management, like a Monday. We have another company. It's a marketing company. So all of those things, instead of having to kind of reinvent the wheel, right? We've been there. And so we're heavily involved in every aspect of the business. So we have someone that runs the business on a day-to-day level, right? Just like you do. And then we oversee everything else. And as we grow and scale, just like any other company, we already have the infrastructure in place to put other people in as we grow and scale to replace us to make those decisions. And these are going to be people with, X years of business experience. And so it's a very, very scalable event. So number one, we have things in place to make sure that we have, like you, Mark, if you take two weeks off, sometimes you could, too much of that in a row, you can start seeing an issue. But also we invite our partners to be very involved in the direction of the business.
What are you guys, I'm envisioning, you talk about being a fly on the wall between you and your partner about the true intentions of the business conversations, what you're trying to do, your purpose, your why. Where's that land?
Well, interesting question. My answer is probably not going to be what you'll expect. Robert and I are both religious and very spiritual. My purpose in life has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. It does. It has nothing to do with mergers and acquisitions per se in business. My purpose in life is that this infrastructure, Elkridge Advisors, is going to create absolute freedom, and it's going to allow the kind of the relation to it is it's going to empower and create Christian and spiritual millionaires. That's my goal. Now then, how does that bridge into what the real purpose is? I know that my real purpose in life is to help elevate the consciousness of men and women altogether. And so what does that really mean? That means driving as many people on this earth towards pure love that I can. And so this is the financial aspect of it. Because as you know, you've read enough books, that the wealth is not something to be ashamed of. Creating true wealth is something to be very proud of, because what does wealth give you? Wealth gives you the ability, resources to do amazing things in the world. And so the right people with wealth can do amazing things. So number one, I said it wasn't really connected. It kind of is, because it's going to bridge me and connect me to other people, and I'm going to help them become very wealthy. And these are very, very good people who all are aligned in that front, that we want to do really good things on this earth. And it's also going to give me the freedom to do that.
Yeah, when I ask questions like that, you're right. It's always like, hey, you're not going to have, the answer isn't going to be expected. But I think that's the source of the question, is because we all have these deep-seated, what we feel is our purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that letting that out more and being true to what that is for all of us, if we're honest, you're going to attract your people. And you're going to, right? And I think that's really important, because sometimes what I found is, like, you could have the most altruistic purpose and reason in the world,
Sure.
and go out here and make a difference. But that might just not connect with someone. And if it doesn't, I think we should be honest and transparent to say, this is who I am. And this is what's going to show up as I'm leading these businesses.
Yeah.
Know what you're getting into. And this is what we're going to build. And so I think too often people are worried about not showing the world who they are because the people that don't want to be a part of it. I think that's the actual wrong approach.
Yeah, man, love it.
Well, because and not even a negative way. It's not that we're going to be exposed. They're going to find out what we're all about anyway.
Sure.
Right. And so I think don't be afraid of what you believe, what your purpose is, what you're trying to accomplish, because there's enough people for all of us to follow and do our thing with us. And if your purpose is aligned with helping them change their lives and wherever that's founded for, your Christian morals and your beliefs and what that purpose is, listen, there are a massive amount of people that you can help change your life that completely identify with that. And
I couldn't agree more. 100%.
Yeah. And I don't think, and what's funny is like, that doesn't have to be my purpose, right? It's funny. It doesn't have to be. And I think that being able to be in a room with people that can have conversations that say, that's unique and different. It's not really what I align with. However, go crush it and do it, because if it's aligned with doing good and helping people, I think that's what we're trying to do anyway.
Exactly, man. 100%.
At least the good ones,
Yeah.
Yeah. And let the bad ones be exposed anyway. So
they'll get their time.
Yeah, they will. They'll get it. And I think I don't think that we need to be out here. I don't have anything to prove to anybody else that isn't trying to do something big with us. So what do you think? Where's this end? So we're here at 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock your time. We got to run. You do too. What do you think this is all worth? Like, I know the spirituality and Christianity, that stuff matters to you. Is there anything beyond that at the end of our lives that really matters? And I'm not trying to be all woo-woo and stuff, but about this business, because we spend all this time, we're sitting here talking, we engage with entrepreneurs, we travel, you help build businesses. Are we doing it just because that's what we're supposed to be doing now? Or is there a bigger purpose to this other than what you already talked about your beliefs? Like, when we're 60 years old, when we're 70 years old, I mean.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just had this conversation just the other day with my daughter. I've spent most of my life, right, chasing that dream, chasing that business, why? To change the generational downwind of for my children, to do all the stuff that I talked about, right? But when the day's done, it starts hitting you that it's all about the relationships, the presence, the power of presence, Eckhart Tolle type stuff, right? The power of being here and now, and just giving every situation, every opportunity with every person, just giving pure love and attention to it, and fostering those relationships, man. When the day is done, that's all we have. It's all we have.
All right, that's good. We talked a little bit of philosophy, right?
Yeah, man.
We talked business and acquisitions. I think we talked about a guy named Greg Reed, right? We both connected with a little bit. He's been on in the past with Secret Knock. And we talked about before the podcast that you're in San Diego and you laugh at all of us that have bad weather. I know.
There you go.
Yeah. But Patrick Rogers,
I'll take you out sailing in December, man. It's all good.
There you go. See, you just keep on dropping the needles in the doll, man. You're just torturing us.
Hey, that's an invitation, Mark. So
all right, invitation to sail in December in the winter. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Patrick Rogers, Elkridge Advisors, really M&A strategy, helping people build their businesses, change their lives. I'm assuming making impacts all around the communities that you touch.
Love it, man. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks for being on.